All right, welcome back. I'm here this evening with JC Glindmyer. He's the owner of Earthworld Comics here in Albany, New York. And JC, I know that we when we were on the podcast or together, Brotherhood of Evil Geeks, we kind of talked about this, but I just kind of wanted to do a more family friendly
Oh, so
version
no,
of it.
well, no cursing, huh? Well, it's kind of hard with a retailer around this time,
I
especially
know.
around this. Um, yeah, it's been a tough couple of weeks. I'm looking at a calendar over here, just glancing at how much things have changed from the first week of March to the last week of March. From the first week of March, we were open, no problem. We've heard of the COVID. Didn't think it was going to affect us. By the second week, we heard, well, it could be a little more serious than we thought. And then when it finally got to the third week, we're really starting to hear some serious things. And we're told that Saturday, I think would have been the 21st, that we had to close to the public. Actually, the 22nd, 5 o'clock. It was a Sunday that we had to close to the public. Now, to add to that problem is we expected a full shipment of books 3 days later. And there's no way we could have let people into the store with all those books, and especially with that order in place. So it was quite a hectic week. It was a very tough week. So finally, we ended up doing curbside service, where we ended up putting a list of all the releases online, along with the prices. We also made a copy of the list. We put it in the front window along with our phone number, saying just call if there's something you need. Just give us a call. And it was quite a busy Wednesday. We worked. It wasn't as busy as it normally was. We worked twice as hard to make half as much. That,
Yeah.
and since
And
then,
then you got the diamond news.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
And then you got the diamond news.
Oh yes, the diamond news. Well, the 25th. Um, I was talking to a couple other local retailers, and we were kind of deciding, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And talking, we all kind of agreed that we know how Diamond works. When Diamond ships us out a week's worth of books, they always have at least another week's in the pipeline. They're always a week ahead. So if they're sending books out, that means they have books there. And currently, Diamond does have at least a week's worth of books in their warehouses just sitting right now. And that includes Batman 92, the first Punchline, possibly one of the books that people are looking the most forward to this year. I think our biggest frustration was we were being ghosted, for lack of a better word, by Diamond, by Marvel, by DC. Like, well, what's going on? And we got no answers, nothing. Even mid-March, they were still going along as Free Comic Book Day was still going to happen in May. As far as we knew, we had some sort of, we were kind of questioning it. But by the 11th, I go, I don't really think this is going to happen. I mean, they even told us by mid-April, they were going to ship us the books. And we get a lot of books, and they weren't going to ship us a couple boxes. They were going to ship us a pallet. So that up in the air, possibly getting a lot of shipments kind of just staggered upon another, stuck at Diamond, or even worse, getting shipped once a week, being unable to open. That would have killed a lot of stores. That would have killed the cash flow. That would have killed a lot of stores, especially now that I believe at least 80 to 90% of the country is under lockdown. And we just heard the news today that we're going to continue under pause for another 15 days or so, I believe, till March,
Uh,
May 13th.
no, it's a month. It's a month.
Right, a month. Yeah, May.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I heard that today, and I go, ugh, we got to do another month of this curbside. It's a lot of work, but we've got a few other ideas.
you guys definitely made the news for what for the effort that you're making.
Um, that was it was a fluke. When we decided to deliver stuff to cars, we're in Albany, and you don't just want anybody walking up to your car. You want to know who's walking up. You want to know who's walking up to your car. See a guy in a sweatshirt may not, give you too much pause. But if you see someone wearing a cape, it's going to catch your eye, and you'd be surprised. A lot of people ask for the cape. It is quite surprising. I went out one time without the cape, and someone was actually visibly disappointed. So yeah, it was basically just to identify who we were. If people didn't know who we were. And one of the most surprising things of this curbside thing that we've done is we've gotten a few customers that have never stepped into our store before. They saw us on the news,
okay,
or they saw us in newspapers. They say, "Hey, I'd like to get my kids reading comics." And so far, we've gotten at least 3 to 4 new customers just by doing this.
oh wow. So I know we also kind of talked about I think it was around April 1st, after the whole Diamond shutdown, was that they some comics hub was going to be taking over distribution, and
Well,
I mean that fell through faster than
what happened was everybody, since there's no communication going on with anybody, everyone's kind of speculating and throwing out ideas. One of the ideas was, well, actually, this is something DC was actually going to do. The first week of April, they were actually considering putting all their comics out digitally. And they said, oh, yeah, well, we still have them in print and you'll get those, but we're going to sell them online digitally. And retailers didn't really care for that, and myself included. I mean, a lot of times people will buy things just to try things out. Once you get something in digital, I don't know if you really own it. I mean, you can download it, but I don't know if you own it. It's not something physical. And a lot of collectors I know are more, they're more into the physical, actually owning something, something tangible, something they can see, something that they can, something that's possibly worth something in the future. When digital comics first came out, there were little stickers inside the comics, and I guess they were $1 more. So we got a couple damaged books in one time. So I actually opened up one, and I actually redeemed the code, and I went through Comixology. And one thing you're able to do is you're able to kind of stretch the panel or go panel to panel. That's kind of good. But the one thing I did notice was the quality of the art wasn't as good. It didn't seem as sharp as it does in a printed page.
Right.
I don't know if it's advantageous to have the artwork blown up panel by panel, because you can kind of see the warts and all.
Yeah.
And the only other option is to possibly just read it as a page, like a regular page. And even that, it's kind of smaller than a regular one. Shh. Oh, my dog.
I know.
Oh, you be quiet. Okay. So digital doesn't really, I think there's 2 different audiences for regular comics and digital comics. People, I think a lot of my customers, I know they do have digital comics. They might have bought them, but I think the majority of them, they do buy physical ones as well. And one thing to add, when you buy a regular comic, most comics, from Marvel and DC, I guess you do get a digital code with them too.
I think some of them.
I know most of the Marvels. I think most of the
I think
Marvels.
DC they only offer it now with the first issues or something.
Okay. Yeah, that's possible. Well, it shows you how much I go through digital for DC. Usually, I prefer to look at the regular comic itself. I can get a better idea because that's the original format that it was created for. Even in a graphic novel, if you've ever seen a comic bound into a graphic novel, you notice it's kind of tight, and sometimes you have to really crack it open to see the double page spread. So on a regular comic where it's saddle stitch, stitched in the center, it lies flat, and so you can get that full effect. And another thing right now is a lot of artists do tend to use the double page spreads, across the 2 pages. A lot of retailers did not like the digital comics at all. That's cutting them out. It's essentially driving customers out and trying to retrain customers to show them that the books aren't really worth that. And I think that's a very poor way to represent your product. Digital should enhance the book. It shouldn't be the other way around.
Right.
So after there was the huge pushback from retailers, DC kind of relents and says, okay, we're not going to put any books out digitally until, for the next 30 days. And then Marvel followed suit. And so there's a couple publishers that are publishing digitally, but there's the smaller publishers but the Comics Hub was, so after all this thing died down about digital, Comics Hub was introduced. And they said, basically, you buy a digital code, you get a physical copy later. And that's basically putting lipstick on a pig. It's pretty much the same thing as before. There was anything different, anything better.
Yeah.
The only difference was it was a retailer based out of New Zealand. I guess it would have benefited him since he's probably the only store in New Zealand. But it doesn't benefit a lot of people in the country right now. As far as when comics are going to return to the stores here, I got a vague idea. Despite today's news about us being shut down for another 2 weeks, I'm still thinking that timeline. I can almost see things coming together. I can almost see bits and pieces of different people working. So I see an idea of a possibility of something coming out, even though they have, and this is, I think, might be to their advantage because they have that week's worth of books all, locked and loaded. They can put those out at any time, or they could even break them down into 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So that's also a very real possibility.
So has there been any communications from Diamond as to you can,
No,
nothing?
nothing. I mean, like I said, I've had ex-girlfriends I talk to more often. It's strange. It's hitting everybody in a different way. It is affecting everybody, even Diamond. From what I understand, they just laid off some people at Diamond, which is unfortunate. I mean, there's some decent people at Diamond too. Hopefully it doesn't, shut down too long. I know we're going to come back. I have we haven't gone anywhere. We're still there. We're still in the trenches.
Mm-hmm.
We don't plan on leaving until DC and Marvel go belly up. We've got plenty of stuff in our store. We've been rocking it for the past few weeks. Like I said, not as good as normal, but doable for the fact that no one has actually come into the store.
Right.
So taking that into consideration, I guess we're kind of lucky. I mean, there's a couple stores that haven't opened at all.
Now, do you see like an increase of people buying like bags and boards so they can finally get to their collections organized?
Yes, in fact, that's something we've been pushing. I made a point to go out and get extra bags and boards for that purpose, and we've been selling them at a pretty healthy clip right now. There's a lot of reorganizing going out there. We actually did a database grab from our POS where we list all the graphic novels we have, and we actually put that online. And people have been shopping off that, as well as we have a list of the current, I'd say, last 6 weeks prior to shutdown of new comics, what we have available.
Mm-hmm.
And people have been picking off that too, as well. When you think about it, there have been times where you haven't in the past, before there were comic stores, you didn't go every week. There are times where you couldn't go for one reason or another, and it was like a month, maybe 2 months. I mean, that's rarely happened for me, but there was a time where I didn't go to a store for maybe about a month. So I'm kind of like trying to compare it to that. It's like a big long dry spell where you haven't picked up any new books in a bit.
So do you think that, given, this current, the current situation and, once things get back to normal, do you think that the comic industry will be, changed or adapt, or do you think things will just go back to normal?
No, I don't think things will go back to normal. This whole thing showed deficiencies in the system. As far as distributors, it shows that there was a lot riding on Diamond's back. And if Diamond went down, everybody went down. And unfortunately, that's what happened. Right now, DC and Marvel are looking into alternate distribution methods. And something's going to come out of this. I think distribution might be changed. Diamond may not be the all be all anymore. That's a possibility. I'd like to see a lot less padding by the main two publishers. Even Marvel has announced that they were going to scale back on some of their releases and kind of reschedule. Every week, we used to get this thing called an FOC, final order cutoff, where we had one last shot to adjust our orders 30 days before we got them. And I haven't had one of those in a while. We saw one this week. I don't know how much faith to put in it because they've put them up before and they've taken them down before. I can honestly say, and logically, I can almost say that everything's going to run at least a month behind, easily. So anything that you thought was going to come out in May is not going to come out until June. Anything that was supposed to come out in April won't come out until May. Like the aforementioned Batman 92, if it's coming out, when it's coming out, not if, but when it comes out, if I was a betting man, I'd pick middle of May. And that's just a guess on my part. Everyone has their own guess, but if I was a betting man, I'd put some money on it. I'd put $1 on it.
So, kind of thinking larger scale, how do you think this will affect things like, conventions? And because I hear that, some are rescheduling, some have been canceled. I think there's a question as to whether San Diego is actually going to take place. And, the Javits is being used as the hospital.
I don't believe, I think this might be the first year San Diego might be canceled. I believe the Albany Comic Con was postponed from April, I believe it was.
Yes.
And I believe John was trying to open or have another one rescheduled for June or something along those lines. I mean, I don't know if he's rescheduled it or not, but convention.
Well, there was the one in April is like a toy and comic show. Then June is like the comics show.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if he's going to go on with that.
He said I talked to him the other night, and he's just kind of waiting to see, how things play out as time goes on.
That's the problem. I
He may
mean,
have to push it back to November.
that's the problem. You can't really plan anything right now. You can't say, oh, we're going to open on this day, or we're going to. I mean, that's got to be tough, planning a convention and having to cancel it. I think the guy in Saratoga just had to cancel his reluctantly, but it was getting towards May, and I don't think anybody expected this to be as far-reaching or to last as long as it has. It is going to change things, and it's going to change things not just in comics, but in everyday life. I don't expect to see as many people in a store. They might actually limit them to begin with. Concerts, I don't know about those. Sporting events, quite possible they're going to have them without even having an audience.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think everything depends, to be honest with you, if we can get more tests. The testing and, like you're saying, flatten the curve. Vaccines. Right now there's just everything's different. Every day is, every day there's more and more.
Right.
They say right now it's flattened. And now we have to wear face masks. I mean, I got mine.
I had mine in the other room.
Pardon?
I said I had mine in the other room, and I wore it out yesterday when I went to the post office, and that was me going outside the neighborhood by myself for the first time in a month.
I just find it amazing that you can actually walk around now with masks on. Before, they used to freak people out. Who'd think walking into a bank with a mask? I mean, not that you're able to walk into a bank.
I know. When I went to the post office yesterday, I had a mask on. I felt like telling the clerk, but I figured they heard it thousands of times. I'm not here to rob you.
Yeah. And now I've seen people dropping plexiglass in front of the registers, and
yeah.
So that's another way it's changed. I think this is it is something we have to take seriously. I know there are some people, and there are times where I think it's a little over the top, but when someone's really, really sick, you have to be really, really prudent, and you have to treat that person very carefully. You have to just nurture them. You have to baby them. And if that's what we have to do right now, that's what we have to do. No one's happy about being home all the time. No one's happy about not being with people. The only thing we can do right now is just do what we're doing, stay home. I go from my house to the store and back. That's pretty much it. That's my routine. If I'm not here, I'm at the store, or on email taking orders for the store. We have to, and boy, we clean a lot at the store now. I just never realized. I guess you really have to be diligent, and this is even without having people in the store. Yeah, always cleaning door handles, always cleaning the counters, always cleaning keyboards. I think it's made everybody a little more health conscious, and the stores looked actually looking a lot cleaner because of it. And that's not a bad thing. But as far as everything else, I think as far as comics concerned, I think you're going to see some publishers finding it hard to get their books out now. I see a lot of independent publishers maybe not making it to the prom because they don't sell as much as Marvel or DC or Dark Horse, and and I see a lot of them maybe going with another distributor. I see the possibility of another distributor down the road, and mostly as a clearinghouse for independent publishers that are not the big five. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting this time next year to see where we are. It's just tough enough trying to get through these weeks right now.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm sure it's, for you who, owning a business, it's, you're, on pins and needles, about that.
I'm only on pins and needles just because I want to know what's going on. I want to know how long we have to be quarantined for. I mean, we had the option of just staying closed or doing the curbside. I mean, we have so much stuff in the store. I mean, it's very limiting doing curbside, but at the very least, people know we're still there. We're still active. We're still answering questions. If they need comics, we're still able to get them out to them. We're doing the curbside, as I mentioned. We're doing mail order. We're going to be starting something possibly as early as next week, a concierge service, where you make an appointment and you have a half-hour window and you got the store to yourself.
Nice.
That's something we're working on right now. We're just working on details, legalities, and all that. I know a certain other place doing it. I think one of my guys said John's doing something very similar to that. John, Adventures, yes. So it sounded like a good. So it sounded like a good idea. So I think I'll steal it.
Okay. So, I'll go ahead and wrap up here. I won't keep you too long, but what would you suggest that if people who are in the Capital District or even out, if anybody else sees this, what do you suggest that they could read in this, time? What do you suggest that they read when they have the time now?
Well, it really depends on what you read before and what you liked. I mean, there's always something to catch up on. I mean, there's things that always fall through the cracks. I mean, you got these big event books, like Absolute Carnage, which wasn't actually really bad. The art was absolutely gorgeous. And Donny Cates is a pretty decent storyteller. There's a lot of secondary series because you hear so much about Batman or you hear so much about Amazing Spider-Man. There's a bunch of other smaller series that you don't hear that much of. Chip Zdarsky's Daredevil is one I would recommend. Boy, you got me at the top. You got me trying to think what else. I'm thinking at the rack, looking at the rack right now. There was a lot of things. Speaking of Cates, his Guardians of the Galaxy was an underrated book. In fact, there's this book called Death of the Inhumans. You know how they were just pumping Inhumans books out for a couple years ago? Well, one of the last ones they pumped out was called The Death of the Inhumans. Donny Cates did write that. And apparently there is a character in there they're going to do something big with. So that's something to check out. Also, if you haven't checked Jonathan Hickman's X-Men, it's definitely worth picking up. It's possibly some of the best X-Men you've read in a long time. It ranks up there with the John Byrne, Chris Claremont X-Men, the original Cockrum X-Men, the Grant Morrison, Frank Quitely X-Men. So it's quite impressive. What else? Actually, I don't really need to sell Batman, but some Batman title, the main Batman title, Tony, I think it was Tony Daniel and James Tynion. I like Tom King's run, but this new run is really clicking with a lot of people. This is more classic Batman, classic villains all over the place, going after Batman, plotting after him, going after his friends and his family, and that's something definitely worth picking up now, because especially with the new issue coming out with Punchline, that's going to be something that's going to be wanted. Deceased is also kind of a fun read. It's for lack of a better word, it's Marvel Zombies but with DC characters. That's got kind of a wicked sense of humor as well. There's also there's a bunch of things coming up, but I'm not going to mention those because they can't get them now. Let's see. Oh yes, there's some definitely independence. Once in Future, by Kieran Gillian and Dan Moore, I believe. It's from Boom. Something is Killing the Children by James Tynion. That's also by James Tynion. That's also another series worth picking up. Second Coming by Mark Russell, who also did the Flintstones.
I just talked to him the other day.
Oh, you talked to him the other day?
Yeah, the interviews on the Facebook page.
Oh, awesome. He had a quote that I ended up stealing and using for one of our, but I did credit him. I wish I'm going to butcher it. Something about how the world just once in a while the world just breaks your heart. Something along those lines.
Yeah.
But he said it much better, and I apologize to Mark Russell for butchering it. But look up the quote; it's definitely worth it. He's a fantastic writer. His Snagglepuss Chronicles, also underrated. His Flintstones volumes 1 and 2, classic, must read. You will never see books like this again. There's no way Hanna-Barbera will ever let anybody do this again.
And we talked about that in our interview.
Mm-hmm. Let's see what I mean. There's a, like I said, use our concierge service. We can point out all kinds of things to you. In fact, we've been compiling a list we're going to post online of suggestions, Earthworld employee suggestions, things that they like to read. And Immortal Hulk. I don't know if you've read that. Al Ewing.
I've read a few issues.
Absolutely beautiful, brutal. Sometimes, once in a while, confusing, but it's definitely a good book. Here comes my bulldog. Okay. Yes, she wants to play. Okay. Well, I'm going to let you go now because I'm being called away.
Well, I just want to tell you that stay safe out there and keep in touch. So
I will, and you do the same. Keep checking our Facebook, our Instagram for more announcements, more news. You got anything? What? No, she doesn't have anything. Okay. Chad,
all right.
take care.
Thanks again for joining us.
Okay.
All right. Have a good evening.
Have a good evening. Thanks for having me. Bye.